My cousin's wife's prenatal assessment indicated turbid amniotic fluid, and the physician advised hospitalization for a cesarean delivery, yet my mother-in-law insisted that a child born at natural term embodies greater vitality. I earnestly cautioned them to heed the doctor's counsel, explaining that turbid amniotic fluid posed a significant risk of fetal asphyxiation, but the family dismissed the warning with casual indifference. That very night, my cousin's wife experienced vaginal bleeding and was rushed to the hospital. The infant, suffering oxygen deprivation, was admitted to the intensive care unit. Blaming me for casting ill omens, they drowned me in murky water laced with filth. Upon regaining consciousness, I found myself returned to the day of my cousin's wife's prenatal visit, where I witnessed her entering the room with a swollen abdomen, collapsing onto the sofa with a heavy thud. She began elaborating on the examination details to my aunt and assembled relatives, her countenance wearing a mask of nonchalance yet her eyes betraying a subtle undercurrent of gravity. The physician noted turbid amniotic fluid and suggested hospitalization, possibly a C-section, but I see no cause for alarm. Many expectant mothers face this. If necessary, I'll attend to it after the Lunar New Year, she remarked. My aunt nodded in vigorous agreement, muttering, "It's neither a malposition nor a nuchal cord issue. Why resort to surgery? A naturally birthed child is inherently more intelligent and robust." Several relatives perceived unease and gently urged prudence, observing that it was New Year's Eve and physicians would not speak frivolously during the festive period. My aunt, however, crossed her arms and glared at them, retorting shrilly, "Hospitals operate under performance quotas. They're merely attempting to instill unwarranted fear. In all my years, I've never heard of this turbid amniotic fluid," she scoffed. My cousin's wife, upon hearing my aunt's assertive tone, began to dissent. "That may not hold true. Physicians are trained professionals. How erroneous could their recommendations be? Would they gamble with human life? Countless others have undergone C-sections, and their children are both healthy and intellectually vibrant," she said, casting a sidelong glance at me and my daughter in my arms. In my past life, I had implored her to seek immediate hospitalization over this very concern. A friend's child suffered due to turbid amniotic fluid. Were the infant to inhale meconium and suffocate, the consequences would be dire, I cautioned. She merely offered a cool, fleeting glance in my direction, her eyes devoid of any trace of gratitude. Instead, her gaze instantly hardened with disdain and aversion. My aunt shoved me impatiently, snapped, "Cease your alarmist rhetoric and mind your own affairs." Being overly sensitive to social decorum, I rarely engaged in confrontation. Mother had always ruled over me with imperious disregard, and my cousin's wife emulated her, treating me as a menial servant. Then, in the small hours of that same night, while engaged in a mahjong game, my cousin's wife suddenly paled. It was I who first noticed the blood on her trousers as I brought her water, prompting the family to descend into panic. With my husband's assistance, we hurried her to the hospital. As my cousin's wife played mahjong, her complexion suddenly paled. It was I who first noticed the blood on her trousers while fetching her water, prompting my aunt's family to panic. With my husband's aid, they rushed her to the hospital. After emergency surgery, the doctor stated that turbid amniotic fluid had caused the baby's asphyxiation, and the infant was transferred to the pediatric intensive care unit. I never imagined that a single well-meaning caution would lead my cousin's wife to attribute all blame to me, accusing me of hexing her with ominous words. My aunt echoed this sentiment, insisting my New Year's remarks had invited misfortune. Subsequently, they invited us to dinner, plied my husband with alcohol until he was intoxicated, then muffled my cries and forcibly carried me to a roadside pond. My cousin's wife herself seized my hair with vicious intent, repeatedly submerging me in the foul water, a putrid mix of sewage and excrement, until I drowned. My poor daughter, only 2 years old, who had chased after us, was also shoved into the pond by my cousin's eldest child and drowned. Clenching my fists at the memory, I swore silently. This time I would not allow their manipulation. I kissed my daughter's head and avoided meeting my cousin's wife's sideways glance. Each person's circumstances are unique, I thought. I had to take oxytocin, my water broke, but labor wouldn't start. Little brother is fortunate. You only felt the incision pain, none of the other sufferings, I said, redirecting the conversation. The topic shifted, and relatives turned to other discussions, no longer urging my cousin's wife. Holding my daughter close, I wondered if, this time without my warning, Shun Hanyu might escape disaster. Following a burst of firecrackers, relatives gathered around to share the reunion dinner. My cousin's wife, leveraging her pregnancy, claimed a prime seat and indulged ravenously in rich meats and hearty dishes, devouring them with unrestrained gluttony. She specifically chose heavily spiced, smoked and fried foods. In my past life, I had foolishly fussed over her then, Googling precautions and fetching purified water from the village to heat for her. I urged her to drink warm water and eat mild dishes, fretting over her every comfort. Now I silently savored my own meal. I directed my husband to feed our daughter, pointedly ignoring her antics. After the meal, however, she pulled me aside, wearing a feigned smile. Could you please talk to your aunt and persuade her to let me be hospitalized? I feel uneasy, my stomach is tight and uncomfortable, she cooed. A bitter smirk tugged at my mind. I knew she was using me as a proxy. Before I could respond, my husband interjected. Sister, you know how stubborn Auntie is, she said on a natural birth. My wife's too gentle to convince her. Besides, it's your family matter. Maybe we shouldn't interfere. She's dead set on a vaginal delivery. My wife's too soft-spoken to sway her. Besides, it's your household's decision. Wouldn't it be overstepping to weigh in? My cousin's wife's expression flickered. Seeing my husband's resolute demeanor, she fell silent. As I went to queue for mahjong, I glanced at my husband, startled to see tears brimming in his eyes. Both of us were inclined to avoid confrontation and preserve appearances. When faced with overbearing relatives who love to dictate, he always smiles and agrees while half-heartedly fuyan, especially with close relatives like aunts and cousins. Although he told me to deal with it perfunctorily, he inevitably asked me to compromise. Before I could understand his sudden change, he picked up our daughter and pulled me upstairs, his steps growing increasingly urgent. Only after returning to the room did he wipe away tears awkwardly and abruptly pull me into a tight embrace. You're back too. The only reason I could fathom for his sudden shift was this. He didn't respond, releasing me only after a long pause. He kissed our dazed daughter and said, You did the right thing, no need to soil your hands. We just need to quietly watch their family make a mess. Yes, we need do nothing but follow the gears of fate, pushing along the predetermined trajectory. They will eventually be crushed by their own ignorance. However, when we went downstairs later to set off fireworks with our daughter, we saw an unexpected acquaintance, a person who hadn't appeared on this day in our past life. Fong Qingqing, the eldest daughter of our cousin. Her face paled at the sight of my husband, panic flashing in her eyes. When she saw me beside him, she guiltily lowered her head. This demeanor instantly made clear what had transpired. I inwardly marveled. Reborn individuals were emerging one after another, and this young girl was also reborn. If she had come to prevent past tragedies, I wondered whether her mother would listen. I had once felt deep sympathy for Fong Qingqing, a girl born into a family that favored sons over daughters, an elder sister who had witnessed her meager old toys thrown into its awushang, miscellaneous items box, by her grandmother under the pretext of making room for her brother. She could only and Baba watch as her brother received new clothes and toys, forced to care for him, feeding him, changing his diapers from a tender age. If she accidentally made him cry, she would face excessive scoldings and even beatings. In my past life, I had always bought her new clothes and pretty hairpins whenever I visited, but what had she done? That night, Fong Qingqing had held her infant brother and pushed my daughter into a muddy pond. The icy, filthy water soaked through her thick clothes, making it impossible for her to stand. Our little girl had drowned in that pond. In the blink of an eye, Fong Qingqing had changed her expression. She approached me, grabbed my hand and sweetly called me Aunt with a smile. Her grandmother rolled her eyes and launched into a stream of harsh curses. It's time to eat. Did you run here from the Wang family because your uncle chased you out? Fong Qingqing timidly hid behind her mother, pulling at her sleeve only to be roughly pushed away. Scram, don't bother me while I play mahjong. Go tell your grandmother to stop accusing your maternal family of falsehoods all day. No, Mom, it's just that I had a dream. I wanted to make sure you... Fong Qingqing faltered, twisting her fingers. Her mother dismissed her. What dream? Don't you trust me? Fong Qingqing stood silently with her head bowed, but I felt a surge of satisfaction. Of course she dared not speak. How could she? If her dream content were taken as a curse, my past experience proved that even suggesting caution through a friend's example had earned me accusations of being a crow's beak and a curse-bearer. How dare Fong Qingqing follow my old path and curse her unborn brother again? With this in mind, what did I have to fear? As my husband gently hooked my finger to signal his observation, I followed his gaze to see our cousin Fong Ming sitting on the sofa with headphones on, smiling as his fingers flew across his phone, presumably chatting with someone. After setting off the fireworks and chatting with other relatives, we excused ourselves to put our daughter to bed. Shortly after, we heard a startled cry from downstairs, followed by chaotic shouts. A female elder exclaimed, "My God, so much blood!" My cousin's water had broken, hours earlier than in our past life. The entire family gathered for New Year's Eve panicked. Even as my cousin wailed in pain, her mother hesitated to send her to the hospital, worrying about the cost. Relatives, fearing the worst, finally forced them to go. By the time my husband and I arrived at the hospital, we saw the grandmother pacing anxiously outside the operating room muttering, "Why does it have to be a cesarean? How much will that cost?" Upon seeing me, she vented her frustration. "Look at you, a delicate city dweller. At dinner today, you didn't even bother to take care of your cousin. The doctor said her test results were poor. Why didn't you Chen-Chen-Ta persuade her to avoid greasy food?" Only after her lengthy rant did I realize she was blaming me for the doctor's comment about turbid amniotic fluid, conveniently forgetting she had personally served my cousin a large piece of pork knuckle to strengthen her grandson's joints. My cousin also joined in, scolding my husband with a scowl. "Why did you two arrive so late? What were you doing on the way?" The baby's already in surgery, and you show up now more like spectators than helpers. How can you be so indifferent to our family's crisis? His words drew stares from surrounding relatives, leaving us flushed with anger. This family excelled at shifting blame and embarrassing others. Before I could retort that my cousin could eat whatever she pleased and I wasn't her nanny, the operating room light flickered off. The doctor emerged solemnly to inform my cousin. The amniotic fluid was severely turbid, almost black. The baby was cyanotic at birth, suffering from severe oxygen deprivation and respiratory arrest. We've admitted them to the pediatric ICU. Please settle the fees promptly. How much will the ICU cost? Is Shun cousin's name having a boy or girl? If it's another good-for-nothing girl, we're not treating it. The grandmother first rejoiced upon hearing it was a boy, then collapsed to the floor in despair at the mention of costs, wailing, "Heaven, why are you so cruel to our family?" Her sobs echoed through the corridor as she begged the doctor, "Please save my grandson first. We'll raise the money as soon as possible. I'll kowtow to you." She pulled Fong Qingqing down to kneel, but the doctor quickly stepped aside to help them up. My husband died young, and I raised my son alone. Now our family of 4 relies on his salary, and this 5th child is born into such trouble. How will we survive? Her pitiful demeanor made it seem as though all the world's miseries had befallen her. My cousin stood by, clutching his hair in distress, looking increasingly desolate under the hospital's stark lights. The grandmother had never been popular with relatives. Only the presence of my husband's elderly grandmother had kept even his parents from avoiding her. Having already helped send her to the hospital, relatives now edged away, fearing requests for loans. Thus she turned to us. In our past life, I couldn't bear to see this white-haired elder kneeling, and had emptied our savings to cover her medical fees. Yet after discharge, she not only refused to repay us but accused me of cursing her daughter, demanding compensation. When my husband criticized her unseemly behavior, they had lashed out at our family. Now, with higher risks and triple the costs, we simply couldn't afford it. My husband stepped back, clearly refusing. The grandmother stared in disbelief, frozen mid-meal, her face a strange mix of embarrassment and shock. Shortly after, rage contorted her features. "What do you mean? Afraid we'll renege on a loan?" she shrieked, pointing at my husband. "Haven't I been good to you? Now that we're in trouble, you want to wash your hands of us." My husband remained calm as if unaware of her dramatic display. "No, just thought you might need to sit down. Let's go, I'll take you to see Shun to the ward." Undeterred, the grandmother turned to me habitually. If you won't lend money, your cousin and I will have to raise it ourselves. Could you come to the hospital and take care of your cousin these days?" I walked ahead, clasping my husband's hand, and made no reply. That night, we booked flights and left for Sanya the next morning with our daughter, turning off our phones to escape the chaos. The grandmother clearly expected me to serve my cousin, just as in our past life. Despite being mere relatives, we had spent the entire New Year's holiday in the hospital, while my cousin avoided the ward under the pretext of work and the grandmother shirked responsibility, blaming either my cousin's weak body or my delicacy. I had once cleaned up after my cousin and helped her walk, while my husband awkwardly stood by. Now we harbored no compassion and fled early. The moist sea breeze greeted us as we landed, dispelling the darkness in our hearts. Previously constrained by fear of gossip, we had never taken our daughter on trips during holidays. Now watching her bounce about like a cheerful bird, we scoffed at our past selves and smiled at each other, heading straight for our beachfront hotel. As she laughed at her crooked sandcastle by the shore, where the sky and sea merged in twin shades of blue, I snapped a photo for my social media. Free from moral coercion, we enjoyed this beautiful time. Meanwhile, in the hospital room, the grandmother ignored my cousin as before, crossing her arms to heap blame. The young Fong Qingqing, barely taller than the bed, was blamed for overreaching to change fate, forced to work tirelessly in the hospital. Upon seeing my social media post, both grandmother and cousin seethed. Zhou Hao and his wife have no conscience. How dare they go on vacation while we suffer? The grandmother slapped her thigh in anger, and my cousin agreed. I thought he cared about me, but she doesn't worry about me at all. After our vacation, we returned to the city for work. My mother-in-law called to complain that the grandmother was now spreading slander about us to all relatives. She mimicked her voice. I even gave them 2 cabbages from my garden, and now when we need help, Xiao Hao claims he's broke but takes his family to the beach the next day. My mother-in-law scoffed. For all her talk of thinking of us, she only calls when she doesn't feel like cooking. Carrying a cabbage and a bag of potatoes, they arrived unannounced, expecting 3 adults to be served fine wines and delicacies. Since then, their accusations of me being a city lady indulging in luxury periodically popped up in the family group. Others don't even eat hens during confinement. Why should she care about her sister-in-law's hardships? My husband snatched my phone and retorted in the group. She's just my cousin's wife. What does her confinement have to do with us? At this, my aunt sent a voice message cursing, calling my husband ungrateful for forgetting the kindness of a candy from childhood. Furious, he logged out of the group using my account. I felt disappointed. With my cousin's confinement ending soon, a major drama was about to unfold, and how could I miss the spectacle? Thus, every night I grabbed my husband's phone to spy on the family group using his account. In the past life, my cousin's son had stayed in the ICU for only a week. This time, diagnosed with aspiration pneumonia, he remained there for a full 4 weeks, barely surviving until her confinement ended. Though my aunt dared not disobey medical advice and took the child for daily checkups, she grumbled in the group about hospitals stealing money, while my cousin complained, Since my discharge, Fong Ming leaves early and returns late every day, refusing to stay with us even a moment longer. After every breastfeeding, Mom fears the grandson isn't full and forces formula. He vomits from overfeeding. These had all happened before, but unlike my past self who tried to warn them about overfeeding, I now eagerly awaited the inevitable explosion. In the previous life, my cousin had added a strange woman's contact without warning, chatting intimately and even arranging hotel trysts, especially during his wife's confinement. Despite 2 weeks of paternity leave, he never stayed home. When caught red-handed, my cousin's infidelity evidence flooded the family group, leaving him mortified. This time, I daily anticipated the drama, but with the child weaker than before, my cousin had less energy to monitor her husband. 2 weeks later, she finally exposed his exploits. Alongside lewd chat logs, suggestive emojis, and explicit hookup messages, there was evidence of him accepting bribes to buy bags for his mistress. A plot twist absent in the past life, revealing new depths of depravity. The family group erupted. Aunts and uncles chimed in. One sent a flurry of angry emojis followed by a voice barrage. How could you do this to Shun? She suffered so much for your child. Another scolded. Our family has always been honest. How dare you take bribes? Apologize at once, return the money, and end that affair. Unlike my past self who privately urged my cousin to delete the posts, I leisurely typed to fan the flames. Wow, cousin always looks so proper. Who knew he had such a dark side? I tossed the phone back to my husband, complaining. After waiting so long, the drama feels anticlimactic. Unnoticed, he saved the bribery evidence from the group. During the Labor Day holiday, we learned someone had anonymously reported my cousin to his company. With evidence confirmed, he was fired and forced to repay embezzled funds. The mistress blocked him, and he drowned his sorrows in alcohol, ignoring his family. My cousin, exhausted from caring for their cerebral palsy son and a jobless husband, grew haggard, while the family descended into daily chaos. Upon arriving for the May Day holiday, we were greeted by screams. Fong Ming, you useless coward. We're starving and all you do is drink. My cousin shrieked. Red-faced and Qingjin bulging, he retorted. I'm useless? All you do is complain. What have you done for our son? As they shouted, my aunt panicked, torn between pleading with her son and comforting her daughter-in-law, only to be cursed at. It's all your fault for refusing my hospital stay. You wanted a natural birth, and now we're bankrupt. Your son spent money on mistresses and now we have to pay. You tell me to calm down? It's too late. Speechless, my aunt collapsed into a chair, lips quivering. Fong Qingqing, spotting us first, eyed the gifts in my husband's hands and lowered her head dejectedly. She must have wondered why I no longer brought her new clothes or toys. To my surprise, she tugged my sleeve, gestured for me to bend down and whispered, Aunt, can you persuade Grandma and Mom to take my brother for a checkup? I feel something's wrong with him. So she too saw me as a scapegoat. Feigning surprise, I exclaimed, but he looks perfectly healthy, plump and rosy. What could be wrong? My aunt interjected with a slap to Fong Qingqing's back. Stop making trouble. You've been nagging about vaccines and free checkups. Your father survived without all that. But Grandma, times are different now. Kids need full vaccinations for school. School? He's still a baby. And those checkups are just scams to sell supplements. Before my aunt could strike again, Fong Qingqing persisted. He sleeps restlessly and cries often. Maybe there's an issue. How dare you curse your brother? My aunt snapped. Tears streaming, Fong Qingqing fell silent. My husband and I exchanged a glance, ready to bypass them, but my aunt blocked our path, eyeing my daughter disdainfully. Our Fong Chengdong isn't like some children, skinny and poorly raised. We feed him well. He'll succeed. By now, my daughter and I had survived the past life's tragedy, so her provocation rolled off me. I smiled and walked past. Intrigued by Fong Qingqing's insistence on checkups, I awaited the next twist. During the National Day holiday, we encountered the family returning from treatment, all through Chi-Chun-Chun. Nearly a year old, the baby still couldn't sit up or babble, let alone crawl. Yielding to Fong Qingqing's advice, they'd finally seen a doctor, who suspected cerebral palsy due to birth hypoxia and delayed motor/language development. When asked about monthly checkups, they admitted skipping all except free vaccines. The doctor sighed. Early intervention could have made a difference. My aunt, now aged 10 years overnight, slapped herself against the wall wailing, It's all my fault. With the diagnosis, the family's financial crisis worsened. My cousin drank more, my cousin cried daily, and Fong Qingqing silently took on more caregiving. In desperation, my aunt turned to theft. Villagers began reporting missing crops and household items. As we strolled through the village with our daughter, chasing after poultry on the third day of our stay, we witnessed my aunt skulking near a neighbor's yard, a basket in hand. Moments later, it was filled to the brim, clutched tightly as she scurried away, her expression fraught with unease. Before she could enter the house, we heard a neighbor grumble, Strange times, who steals sweet potatoes these days? They're for pigs. I'd have given them away gladly. Inside, we caught her hiding the bamboo basket in my husband's grandmother's room, her face flickering with panic before she forced a smile. I said nothing, carrying our daughter straight to our room, unwilling to expose her to this chaos. In the following days, my aunt's behavior grew increasingly furtive. She pilfered beans, corn, and tools from villagers' yards when unsupervised. Once my husband even saw her brazenly cart off a brand new bamboo mat. On the final day of our vacation, she targeted our daughter. At a village feast, she tried to stash stolen goods in the stroller, cooing, Help your grandma hide this, dear. There's candy in it for you. My daughter stared blankly, but I swatted the items away, furious. Aunt, as an elder, how dare you teach a child to steal? My husband added coldly. This is theft. With cousins earning money, what would others think if you're caught? Have you no shame? She froze, then collapsed to the ground, snarling. You think you're better than us? You fled to the beach when we needed help. Your cousin's jobless, Chingdong's sick. We're starving. What choice do we have? Disgusted, I pulled my family away without a backward glance. The next visit was for Lunar New Year. Through the car window we heard elders whispering. Have you heard? The Fong family's cursed. The grandson born on New Year's Eve has cerebral palsy. The son's jobless and drinking. And now the eldest daughter's been arrested by the police. Exchanging alarmed glances, we hurried home to find my aunt disheveled and hollow-eyed, my husband's grandmother sighing deeply. What's this about Ching being arrested? My husband demanded. My aunt collapsed into sobs. It's all my fault. I ruined her. As it turned out, after Chengdong's diagnosis, the family spiraled into poverty. My cousin drank endlessly. My cousin vented her rage on them, screaming at my aunt. If you'd let me have a C-section, my son wouldn't be like this. She blamed Fong Ching, slapping her and hissing. You cursed him. You owe him. My aunt chimed in. Ching, atone for your brother. At first, Fong Ching refused, but daily coercion. Your brother needs money. You're the cause of his suffering. Broke her. They stole crops, tools, anything sellable. One day, she was caught and apprehended. The police traced the crimes back to my aunt. Grandmother trembled with fury, yelling. This is how you raise a child? I taught you to beg if desperate. No one beats a beggar, but thieves get punished. You've destroyed her. My aunt wept. I had no choice. Chengdong's treatments. No choice but to walk the wrong path. Grandmother snapped. Just then my cousin stormed in, grabbing my aunt's hair. You old hag. Look what you've done. They scuffled, as my cousin laughed drunkenly. This family's already dead. To our relief, they stayed away all New Year, granting us our first peaceful holiday. The next news came via my mother-in-law. One night, Chengdong spiked a fever. My cousin, drunk, crashed the car en route to the hospital. Both he and the child died. My cousin, driven mad, blamed my aunt, dragging her to the same muddy pond where my daughter had nearly drowned in our past life. She drowned my aunt before drowning herself. Hearing this, I felt no triumph, only profound sadness. Their downfall, as I'd foreseen, was a tragedy of their own making. At a prenatal nutrition lecture, I couldn't help recalling my cousin's reckless diet. Afterward, I consulted experts about turbid amniotic fluid, absorbing every detail on diet and monitoring. Inspired, I launched an online platform sharing pregnancy and parenting knowledge, determined to spare others from similar mistakes. Though initially ignored, I persisted, crafting content on everything from prenatal care to early childhood education. A quiet mission born from past sorrows.